Hey you guys, I am finally attempting a sourdough starter. Now the possibility of failing is very real. For literally years, I have put off trying a sourdough starter. And actually, as I say that, that's not entirely true. Back in the day, about 5 or 6 years ago, I got really into self-sufficiency and making everything from scratch, and I heard somewhere that you could make your own starter, and so I gave it a try. To my disappointment, it totally didn't work out. And instead of trying it again, I just decided to cut my losses and just keep using the bulk yeast that I had from Costco. So over time, since then, having a sourdough starter became one of those items that got subconsciously moved from my to-do list onto my unwritten bucket list, which is a pretty dangerous place to be. Not only because it's not written down, but because of the drastic difference in my mind between something I fully plan on checking off the list in the near future to something that I hope to maybe do someday. Now, despite my curiosity and downright commitment for learning to do sourdough sometime in my life, it still has never been enough to conquer the guilt and the dread and the overwhelm keeping me from trying it again. So as you know, life ebbs and flows, and lately the fact that I don't have a sourdough starter has been on my mind again. It feels like this long lost acquaintance that comes around every once in a while to taunt me and weigh me down and remind me that I failed once and I still haven't tried it again. So the fact that I didn't have a starter really bothered me, yet there was something keeping me from doing it, and it wasn't until recently that I realized what that something was. It was the simple thoughts that popped into my mind every time I thought about sourdough. I'll never have time for that. I'm sure I'd mess it up. I don't know how. All these years of not having a sourdough starter and entertaining the thought, I don't know how, has left me feeling like a total loser and downright failure. So I guess you're wondering how I finally managed to do it. To finally, after years of turning down several people's offers, to finally tell my sister-in-law that I was ready for some of her starter. Why and how did I do that? The answer to those questions is very simple. I decided that I wanted to. Many people, including my past self, would argue that that's not a good enough reason. Some things are just too big or too hard, or life is just too busy to simply decide to do something. But I've realized that that mentality just is not for me. I want to decide on purpose what I do with my life instead of listening to that doubting voice in my head. So I finally decided that when it came to having a sourdough starter, telling myself I don't know how wasn't going to stop me anymore. So, once I told my sister-in-law to have my jar ready for me the next day at our family party, unfortunately, it was not excitement that I was feeling. Instead, I felt the very distinct feeling of fear. As I leaned into that feeling a little bit, as I'm learning how to do, I could tell that the biggest hurdle that I was facing was the possibility of failing. Failing really does freak me out. Failure feels like butterflies in my stomach, like getting a test back in school and seeing a terrible score. I feel small and like the world is just kind of caving in on me when I feel failure. And that's what I felt after I told my sister-in-law that I was ready for a starter. I might take the starter home and do something wrong. I might ruin it. I might make some recipes that don't turn out, which will waste all that time and the cost of ingredients. I feel afraid that I might be in over my head and be inviting more stress into my life, which is the last thing I need. I fear the discouragement, I think, that I might feel as I make mistakes. So these were all reasons I told myself no to sourdough in the past. I didn't want to feel failure, so I wasn't going to give myself the opportunity to fail. But the sad part was I also wasn't giving myself the opportunity to succeed. And I realized that just moments ago, I told you that all these years when I was thinking I don't know how about the fact that I didn't have a starter, I was feeling failure. The very thing that I've been trying to avoid. I can't believe the irony as I even say that out loud. So, in my effort to avoid failing all this time, I was feeling failure because I wasn't trying. I don't know how was keeping me stuck for so long. I felt failure from that thought for years until I realized that I could decide what I wanted to think instead. And so I wanted to find a thought that brought a more positive emotion. The phrase that I'm trying on at the moment is, I'm ready to learn how. That feels totally true to me, and it actually brings the feeling of motivation into my body. I get pumped. I get excited to try out sourdough, to have some wins and even some losses. I'm motivated to get some experiences under my belt. I have decided that now is the season for sourdough in my life. Not really for any other reason than that I've just decided to make room for it in my life right now. It's important to me, and I'm ready to make it happen. It's also been a conscious choice for me to realize and own the fact that saying yes to this sourdough adventure right now may mean that I'm saying no to other things, like that book that's on my nightstand half read, or that other hobby that I've been thinking about lately. It is going to mean quite a bit more time in the kitchen and some extra time on my phone looking at recipes. But most of all, it means some pretty significant mental energy as I go through the learning process, figuring it all out. We all only have so much bandwidth, right? This is why starting sourdough is a very conscious decision for me. I have physically and figuratively made space for this in my life right now. Another piece to this whole situation that I've been working on is choosing to believe that now is the perfect time for this. It would be really, really easy for me to feel some regret about the past, all this time of not doing sourdough, right? It would be easy to also dwell on the future, to be really stressed out that I may not want to be doing sourdough in a year from now, so maybe I shouldn't get into this. But both of these continue to keep me stuck. Both of those take my focus off of accomplishing what I want to accomplish right now. And so instead, I'm focusing on this present moment and my desire to learn this new skill. I'm not worrying about the past or the future. I'm just embracing the now. I'm deciding to take the pressure off of succeeding and embrace this motivation that I feel to just simply try. Because now I can honestly say that for me, trying is succeeding. It has nothing to do with how my sourdough turns out or the recipes or any of it. It's simply that I'm gonna do it. So now, as I step into the unknown of my new sourdough starter, I am letting that fear of failure just be there. The more I allow it, instead of trying to avoid it or push it away, it takes away more and more of its power. Failure really is a totally harmless emotion. It's uncomfortable, sure, but I've realized that I actually don't have to avoid it at all costs. So what is failure anyway? To fail is to be unsuccessful in achieving your goal. So instead of my goal being to have a certain type of starter for a certain amount of time and to make a set amount of yummy recipes, I'm simply saying that my goal is to try a sourdough starter. I'm all about making huge specific goals and reaching for the stars, but in this case, that would have really bogged me down and continued to keep me from doing anything. So simply trying, for me, is scary enough. So I feel that I'm on target going after this goal in this way. I'm embracing the possibility of it not going as planned. And the beautiful thing is that being willing to fail opens the door to so many possibilities. So, what's the fear of failure been holding you back from lately? Once you face that head on, you may just realize that you're failing more by not even trying. Go after that dream of yours. I'll see you soon.